Hey, so I'm going to go over an example of a meal plan, and it is going to zero in on your specific calories and macros, which are 1,800 calories and 135 grams of protein, 180 grams of carbs, and 60 grams of fats. Try to get as close as you can to those macros. If they're a little bit off, that's totally fine because it's hard to hit them exactly. But as long as you're within, a 5 to 15 gram range of them, that's totally fine. But with your fats specifically, I wouldn't skimp on your fats because we actually need those. So going too low with your fats, anything below 50 is very, very low, especially for a woman. So with your fats, try to hit those on point as close as you can get. But with your protein and carbs, it's okay if you're a little bit over or under. Typically with protein, we usually don't go over in protein. It's hard to hit protein. So with your carbs, it's okay if you are a little bit over. But if you're over significantly by like 20, 30, 40 grams, then it's a significant amount. But 5 to 15 grams isn't a whole lot. So, okay, with the last training module I sent you, it focused on pre-workout meal and post-workout meal and also protein. So for right now, I just want you to focus on hitting protein and how to do that with the foods that you prefer out of the protein dense food item list. And you should have a piece of paper that you wrote them out on to have on hand. And you could add to that as you find out more things that you like that you want to add to the list. But those are going to be your go-to protein dense items to make meals out of and to add in your day and to grocery shop and get. Okay, so here is a sample day. And you're going to have this Google document to have so you can look it over without me talking on it. But it's just going to explain the servings of each macro. So typically when people log their foods and try to hit their macros, they don't really break it down into servings because it can it's not as specific and dead on, but this is going to be very close in a very close range to hitting your macrograms with looking at these laid out in servings. So for your macros, I suggest hitting around 6 servings of protein, 4 carb servings, 4 fat servings, as many vegetables as you can get in. Really, those are always like the hardest to get in for anybody. And about 2 fruit servings, which are carbs as well. So your protein, fats, and carbs. And you will be getting, in your next module, you'll be getting the food lists, which are going to categorize all of these foods into lists, the carbs, fats, and proteins. So it'll be easier, which I think you're pretty familiar with these, but you'll have it laid out in a different module. So you can look over these meals for throughout the day, and at the bottom you'll see I did your workout after dinner and a post-workout snack, and then a snack later on. With whatever time you consume that at, you can actually eat that whenever. It doesn't have to be at 8:30 to 9. It can be at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, whenever. It doesn't matter. Okay, and here is the macro breakdown of that day's worth of food. This is exactly what it came out to be in the food logging app. So it's about 170 grams of carbs, 50 grams of fats, and 125 grams of protein. So calorie wise, it's a little bit under 1,800 calories, but it's pretty close to your protein. It's very close to your fats, and it's around your carbs. As long as you're getting over 115, 120 grams of protein, that's awesome. Try to not go below that. But it's also good to hit a little bit under your calorie mark just in case your portion loggings are off a little bit, or which is very common to do. So it's almost good to leave a little bit of fats and carbs, because a lot of times we eat more pasta, we add in more sauces and dressings and snack sizes that we tend to accurately log. So this is, to me, an awesome day of getting close to your macros. Like I said, it doesn't have to be 100% perfect. This is a great way to go about it. And another tip with logging in MyFitnessPal is, if you already know what you're going to have for breakfast, or if you already know what you're going to have for dinner, you can actually put that in to your food log at the beginning of the day, so you know approximately how much of your macros are taken up from that. And then you can kind of gauge, like, okay, my dinner is super high in carbs and fats, and it's awesome if there's protein in there as well. Most likely there will be. But if you know that you're having a high fat and high carb dinner, it's probably not the best idea to have a higher carb and higher fat breakfast and lunch as well. So then you can kind of gauge how to disperse your carbs and fats in your other meals. So that's just a little tip with logging as well. If you already know what you're going to have for dinner, if you're having pizza, whatever, put in 3 slices of pizza, and then you can have an idea of how to navigate the day around that. And then this, I'm just kind of zeroing in on one of the meals, which was the breakfast: an English muffin, a teaspoon of butter, and 2 eggs. I'm kind of just breaking down those macros of this meal so you get more of a visual of what that is. So it was around 26 grams of carbs, 14 grams of fat, and 17 grams of protein. So like I just mentioned, it's okay if one of your meals is way higher in carbs and fats, as long as you learn to gain that intuitive, navigated sense of how to eat around that in your day and not go over your fats and carbs, considering that meal that you already know you're going to have. And some days we don't know what we're going to eat, and that's why logging all of those meals will give you an idea of where you placed a lot of your fats and where you could have done better with your portion sizes and added in more protein. And that's what I go over in macro assessments, is breaking down a couple days of what you ate and what you could have adjusted and added in. So we're never really cutting anything out. We're just adjusting and doing different portions and adding more things in. And you can use this chart if you want to check off serving sizes, if you choose to do that. And here, lastly, this is a visual showing an approximation of what a serving size of protein, carbs, and fats are. And I don't want you to get too hung up on this, but it's kind of a good thing to learn and kind of have in your brain. So typically 1 serving size of protein is around 15 to 30 grams of protein, depending on what you chose. And proteins are leaner and some are higher fat. So, macros have other macros in them as well, but a protein dense item is around 15 to 30 grams of protein, depending on what it is. If you chose a yogurt, it's usually around 15 grams. If you chose something like steak, it's usually around 30 grams per serving of protein. So it really depends. And some are higher and lower fat, like I mentioned. Usually a carb serving is usually around 16 to 25 grams of carbs, depending on what you chose as the item. And fruits are also carbs. So fruits are usually around 15 to 20 grams of carbs per serving. And you always look at the serving size on the label, or you can look it up anywhere of any type of food. And if you had 2 servings of something, then that would count as 2 servings, and you would double the serving size. Or if the serving size is 2 servings, then that's what that means on the label, which I actually go over this in a different training module, but I don't want to ramble on about that. But a fat serving is typically around, on the teaspoon list, is about 5 to 8 grams. And one of the blue fat servings are usually around 12 to 15 grams of fats. So the food lists, you'll be getting that in a separate training module, and you've gone through them before, the colored food lists, which basically is breaking down carbs, fats, and proteins. But also vegetables have a little bit of carb servings in them as well. Very minimal. But basically everything you eat all day long has carbs, fats, and proteins in it. It's just some are more dense and higher, and some have a combination of other things like carbs. Some carbs or some fats have protein in them, and some don't. So some macros have other macros in them. But I will be breaking that down in a totally different training modules, but I just wanted to briefly go over that. But these should be very helpful into logging, and having like a sample meal plan. Let me know if you have any questions. I hope this helps, and I'll be talking to you soon.